Welcome to the Sydney Innovation Festival with our panel Round 2, Insights from Repeat Founders. My name is Nico and I'm the moderator of this session, but I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia who have been innovating here for tens of thousands of years. I'm currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm joined by co-founder of the iconic and now co-founder of Hatch, Adam Jacobs, co-founder of Frank, and now co-founder of SENSOR.I.AM, Jessica Kiely, and finally, co-founder of WipeHero and now in the process of developing another startup, Farid Mirmohensi. Welcome to all. So today we are joined by repeat founders, and I hope they have their elevator pitching skills ready. My first question basically is, if you can answer in under 30 seconds and try and keep it really short, is what does your current startup do? And then what are you most excited about that's coming up in this year? We'll start with Adam.
So my current startup is Hatch. It's super hard to know what to do with your life when you're just starting out, when you're at uni or you've just graduated. So Hatch is a new type of jobs website that helps young people find work that's a good fit, not based so much on what you studied or like where you've come from, but more based on who you are as a person. So your like skills, your interests, your values, connecting them to jobs. We kind of believe that resumes and degrees can limit people in, and we want to open them up and connect them to work that's a good fit no matter where it is.
That's perfect. But what are you most excited about this year?
Like summer. I'm really excited for summer. I was going to give a non-startup answer. I don't know. I was doing a lot of travel this year in the States, and I'm just excited for an Australian summer.
Perfect, perfect. And Jessica?
Yeah, so SENSOR.I.AM or SENSOR.I.AM is a natural perfume online store. We specialize in 100% natural luxury premium perfumes that are really hard to find unless you know where to go and find them. So we sit in that green beauty space. And it only actually started February this year. So it's a newer one, that's for sure. What am I excited about this year? Because there's only a few months to go, so there's not much left. I'm super excited of, it's a holiday as well, going on a break. I haven't had a holiday this year, so going on a break.
There you go. Now this is going to be it's really funny to see on this panel. We have all these different stages for the second startup, from quite developed to maybe a year down the track to just coming up with the ideas. So Farid, if you want to talk about WipeHero, or if you want to talk about what you're looking at in what space, under 30 seconds, your elevator pitch, please.
Okay, let's look forward. I guess, so the space I'm pretty interested right now is the way we're developing products in the chemical industry, ranging from your everyday goods at home to paints, coatings, adhesives. It's largely based on trial and error. It takes few years, millions of dollars, simply because there's a lot of experiments that chemists, formulators need to do in the lab. So I'm very interested in the intersection of the chemical industry and AI, with all the advancements, and how you can basically 10x that speed to market, and look at how you actually manufacture products with less environmental impact, for cheaper price with better basically ingredients.
Fantastic. And what are you looking forward to this year?
Getting this off the ground.
Fantastic. It's quite funny. I should have introduced Farid before as Dr. Farid, and he obviously has this interest because he has a PhD in biomedical engineering. Is that right?
Close. Chemical engineering.
Chemical engineering. Almost had it there. One of the questions I really liked from our previous panel was they asked the panelists, okay, if you have a superhero power, what would that be? And try and be as arrogant as possible. So what I might do this time is I'll actually start with Farid, and we'll just go across. What's your superhero power?
Oh, so many. I'll probably say, I'll give you two.
Okay.
I'd say empathy and consistency. I think empathy, I've come to realize is a superpower, because I think it builds trust. So if you care, that actually builds trust, and trust can build and attract good people around you. So I think always, act with empathy, and then consistency, because if you keep showing up, I think that's basically the recipe to any success. So
consistency or resilience or perseverance, more consistency.
I guess, yeah, you could say all three, but all consistency.
Yeah. Very similar there. I wasn't meant to ask a follow-up, but I actually did want to ask you this. Was those two superhero powers, do you feel like you were born with those, or do you feel like those developed over time? Because it's quite interesting with empathy there.
I'd say these are learned skills. But I think we get distracted in life. Like there's there's a lot of reasons. For example, if you are an empath in the business world, I think it's kind of looked down upon. You learn to suppress emotions because you're meant to act with logic a lot of the times, and it's very easy to distract yourself or accept that as a flaw. So I think, yeah, over time, it's, I'm learning to integrate it into my everyday life to actually be able to, have different compartments for different emotions. And consistency, I think, I'd say it's more genetic. Yeah, I'd say you kind of have it or you don't have it.
Adam has a funny reaction there. What do you think? And it might be interesting if we have similar superhero powers on this panel, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I love those two powers. I think I've observed them to be really important in like the time I've spent in startups. For me, I think the two skills I have that I think have played an outsized role in helping me get to where I am. They're probably not too different to yours. One would be curiosity. I genuinely want to listen to what's going on for people, and I'd rather them be right than me be right. So at the moment, building Hatch, we're trying to serve people at the start of their career. That's a different time in the career to where I'm at. So how do I know better? I don't really know better than them. I've just got to like talk to them and listen to them and understand what's going on for them and pull out the key patterns. And I've done that all the way through my life, from starting, working in a cafe and just listening to like what's going on for people when they order a coffee, to being in strategy consulting and understanding what's going on for a business, to starting the Iconic and understanding what's going on in fashion brands. 10 years ago, it's sort of like a skill that's always helped me design better solutions. And the second one would be learning agility. Like, I just love learning new stuff. And I think we can learn anything. Like, if you go down a rabbit hole, you'll come out the other side with new skills. So I'd never built an e-commerce company before starting the Iconic, had to figure out warehousing, logistics, and supply chain, and delivery, and online marketing, and inventory management, and hiring 1,000 people. And like, that feels like a mountain to climb, but you can just learn it like one at a time. And I believe we can learn anything. I think consistency can probably be learned. I think it's like a discipline that you got to work out over time, but I'm definitely a believer in a growth mindset. And if you care enough about picking up a skill, you'll be able to build it.
I love that, because that links well to my questions later on as well. Jessica, do you have similar superhero powers?
Yeah, and all of those superpowers are very important along the way. I think one of my superpowers is definitely my positivity and my energy. Anytime I go and do something, because I'm a speaker and a presenter at the same time as well, and everyone always comments on that energy. And I think that has very much fueled, we did startup and building and keeping on going and doing it all over again. You can't do that unless you've got a really good life energy running through you, basically, so that other people feel it and they want to be a part of it at the same time. So that would definitely be one of my superpowers. And the other one is futuristic, being able to see in the future in a way. There's been numerous times when it was actually, when this was a long time ago now, probably 15 years, in this, over at the Seymour Centre, down in one of the rooms, when I was running the Frank team, well, one of the things we did was do similar like incubator things, but for young entrepreneurs. We were running young entrepreneur evenings. And I remember one of them we ran over at the Seymour Centre there, and the two gentlemen from Atlassian were there right at the beginning of their journey, sort of thing, in that particular building at that thing. And it's, no one was doing young entrepreneur events at that time, and it's what I was doing. So it's just that being able to see that little bit further in the future really is a superpower of mine, has helped.
Fantastic. So if we do a quick summary as almost like a checklist for students to take home, we have futuristic thinking, or seeing into the future. We have positivity, positive mindset. We also have a learning mindset from Adam, and that comes along with curiosity. And then from Farid, I think we have consistency and then empathy. So that's sort of our checklist to take home today. Fantastic. Great. I'll move on to my next question. So something I found really interesting was each of your startups, you have a background and a focus on tech. Every single one of you has sort of this background and focus on tech. How would you recommend that students in this room become more involved with tech? Particularly for the students who go, I'm not a tech person. There's no way I can do that. I'll start with maybe Adam this time.
Yeah, so I mean, my background, I did a commerce arts degree at Sydney Uni. My arts was all philosophy. I kind of really only cared about philosophy at uni. I just loved it so much. The commerce was like, well, you should have something that's like useful on paper, so do a commerce degree. No one's going to hire like a philosophy major. At least that's what I thought. So I definitely like didn't have exposure to tech when I was younger. And, at that stage of life, tech wasn't what it is now. It was more like the IT guy in the back corner, like who fixes your computer when it breaks. That's what tech was kind of known as. It wasn't a
glamorous
cool,
field.
not glamorous. And I became exposed to it through not directly, but indirectly pursuing passions I cared about that led me to tech. So, if you're going to build a better retail experience for Australia, it's going to be online. And that made me interested in the technology behind it. If we're going to help young people find jobs that are more relevant for them, then you've got to use technology to do that at scale. So I think my advice from my own experience would be, don't worry about exploring tech, worry about exploring problems you care about, and just let them lead you to all the different surface areas that they touch.
Perfect. Jessica, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm not a tech person either, so I can empathize with those who might be worried about doing a business in this age if you're not interested or not knowing how to code or things like that. But really, it's about if you've got a great idea, follow that passion, and you'll find the people who want to build it for you, who don't want to be at the front and they don't want to lead and they don't want to organize the team. But you have to be interested in tech and who's doing what and what's happening and going out in the world and seeing what else is going on, because that's how you kind of connect dots along the way and meet other people who then might be able to build those things for you. I did hear a quote the other day that if you're in business, if you don't consider yourself a technology business, no matter what you're doing, you won't actually be here for very long.
And
So-
you stand by that quote too, you believe it?
100%. Yeah. We're a tech company. We just happen to deliver perfume to your door. But the technology needs to be there in order to do that and help you to choose the right one and, all those things.
And your solution to that, or your idea behind that, is to have collaboration involved.
100%.
So seek out that tech person, make them part of that team.
Yes.
This would be interesting to find out Farid's point of view on this, because Farid is very heavily involved in tech, probably the most so in the panel. What is your perception on not whether the value of tech or how to get involved, but how can students here get involved in tech if they want to be that tech person?
I think something it's quite easy to ignore is the kind of this era, this generation that we're living in. It's never been easier for a couple of people to get into a room, build something that can reach millions of people. Like that fact, I think, should basically be enough inspiration for anyone to basically chase anything that they want. Like for my parents, that wasn't even something they could conceive of thinking. So I guess with that mindset, going back to your point, I think tech is an enabler. It's a solution to scale things. But if you're truly passionate about solving a problem, dig that, like try and explore that. And eventually you'll hit a wall where, if you don't have a website, you can't serve more than 5 people. If you don't have, I don't know, a product that's hands off, you can't do X, Y, Z. That's when you go after, building that tech. But initially, I think being focused on tech is kind of like focusing on doing it the other way around. Trying to, look at something and then try and work it backwards.
So you're trying to find that problem first, and then you're trying to go, okay, how can technology enable this or scale this solution? Right?
Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, great. And I'll follow up on a question on that too. So Jessica's saying that beforehand, we had these people from Atlassian, I think it's Mike Cannon Brooks, etc. The founders are there, and then just at which building was it?
Over at the Seymour Centre and the underneath one.
Right at the Seymour Centre here at the University of Sydney. And this is when startups weren't really that profound. Do you think, and I'll ask Fred this, do you think it's because of this accessibility and, it wasn't able for your parents beforehand that these students are able to go, okay, now it's options, that's why everyone is trying to do this? Does that make sense?
Not really.
That was a long-winded question there, sorry about that. To say that now it's so accessible, this is why we have such a buzz around startups.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Like, I guess, my parents, for example, going back to that example, they had so many things to worry about, right? Like there was the survival instincts, there was all that kind of stuff. So I think now we've got it easy, to be honest, right? Like there's a lot of things that we don't need to worry about. It's quite easy to set up a website. It's quite easy to, get people to, give you feedback on certain things. There's a lot of groups, there's a lot of movements, there's a lot of, I guess, things that remove that barrier to entry to start thinking about, building something. So I think a combination of those things, there's a lot of capital as well. So combination of those things just makes it easier and easier to do things. It's probably harder not to do things now than to do things. Like it's that simple.
That's funny. So let's get to the crux of the panel, which is this. We obviously have repeat founders here. You've all done very successfully with your previous startups, but I'm sure what the top question on most students' minds is, what's the hardest part? Is the hardest part getting started, like everyone says, or is it 3 years down the track? I'll start with you, Jessica, if that's okay.
It depends. Like, there's a lot of depends on in there. Yeah, it depends on your level of passion for it in the first place. It depends on how much capital and how successful it can be in what time. I've never found the beginning of anything difficult. I'm actually very good at that. I love. Sometimes it's a little bit like a bright shiny object, though. You then like something new, something new, something new. Whereas then once you've done the new, you actually really have to focus and double down on it in order to make it a success. So I don't find the beginning hard because there's so much energy and there's so much optimism to begin with. But then you get your friends involved and your family buying from you and things like that to begin with. And then it can kind of grow from there. It's the build, that next part of the build where it's now we have to continually feed it in a way as a machine and continually look for new problems and how do we solve them. That's a little bit more challenging, I find.
Interesting. Did you have a similar perspective, Adam?
I think two things I've observed as like I guess principles of doing it twice. One is that I think each stage brings problems, and there's often this like habit of being a little bit rose tinted glasses about a different stage to what you're in. And I hear this a lot from teams at startups. It's like, this is hard, but when we get to that point, it's going to be easy. Or this is hard, and it used to be so much better like in the early days. And the reality is that every stage is difficult. Like every stage brings a different set of challenges. When we were just creating the Iconic, nothing worked. Like everything broke all the time. We had a bunch of people sitting on Bunnings picnic tables, clambering over each other with cockroaches and wires, and all the fashion brands were like, why the hell are you doing this? No one wants to shop online. You should stop right now. We're going to put you out of business. It had like a unique set of getting the model started challenges. And then if you think about where it is now, it's a large organization with 3 million items of stock that goes through a robotic system every day, and designing robotics for 3 million items of stock on a daily basis is not easy. So it's going to be hard at all stages. You've got to just make sure you're doing it for the right reason and not be a bit deluded about that. The other thing I've observed is there is no blueprint for success. Like every startup's different, and it's not like there's an out-of-the-box solution to grow one successfully. Hatch, for example, is much more about invention than the Iconic was. We're building a model that didn't exist before. So there's a lot of test and learn, whereas the Iconic was more about execution. We took a model that kind of existed in other markets, but not in Australia, and executed it well here. So there's just not a blueprint. Every journey is different, and so I wouldn't worry too much about like what other people are doing when you start doing it yourself. You just kind of focus in on your own thing.
Yeah, right. And so for you personally, though, did you have a particular area that you thought, okay, this is really overwhelming for me, and this is where probably the furthest down point of the build was? Yeah, I think, and to Jess's point, I guess like everybody has a different sort of skew and skill set. Like I'm very execution focused. Like I like hard execution. I like to sort of get in there in the buzz of it on a daily basis and like juggle all the balls and like make it work. I kind of almost like the second stage you talked about, which is now we're going to double down and execute. The first stage I find almost more difficult because you don't have so many fast feedback loops. So they're like the 0 to 1. We've got a new idea. We want to see if it's going to work. You don't get as much feedback as when you're at the 1, you're going to 2, and it's like this thing's out in market, we're trying to improve it. Lots of people are already using it, and so we've got data to work with. I guess I'm like a bit of a data-driven execution kind of person, so that's my skew. And so do you think that's why it's really important to have different people in the team and different mindsets? Because people will enjoy different parts of the stage and other people won't. Like you sounds like your perspectives are quite different there.
I think yes, but I also think as a founder, you've got to be prepared to like go on a development journey and not just be one thing. You know, I've had to reinvent myself 5 times over in taking the Iconic from 0 to $1 billion revenue company. Like what it needs out of a CEO at $1 billion revenue company is totally different to what it needs from a startup founder, like 5 people in a room. And so you've kind of got to be prepared to look at yourself and say, all right, where's the business now? Where am I now? And like, where am I falling short? And like, what are the next skills I need to build to step up to what's needed of me?
I've always said that like startup and entrepreneurship is the best self-development program you could ever go on, because the evolution that's required of you is forever as well if you're sticking to it. Yeah.
So if we go into like a more specific example, Farid, how many different hats did you have to wear when you're at WipeHero? And can you explain some of those to the students here?
Yeah. So to paint a picture, so I was doing my PhD at UC, and Literally the first couple of weeks that we basically launched or did a soft launch, we probably launched hundreds of times. I was actually out on the streets washing cars as soon as the booking came. And I would basically have the car washing equipment in my car, go clean the car, come back, pretend like I've always been on campus, in the lab, and then go to the lab, do some experiments with, dirt and grime basically under my nails. And then just kind of repeat that over and over again until that just got, too much to handle. And then that was kind of like a turning point. So I guess there's nothing, you're basically the janitor at the beginning, you're the CEO, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't really like names. I think there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done. And you're kind of thinking about creating value. That's all the business is. You're creating value for someone or a group of people. And it just happens that no one else has been able to do that at that price, at that kind of experience. So you're kind of working backwards from an experience you're trying to give to your customers, and whatever needs to be done along that journey, you kind of pick it up and take it.
And so given that point that you have, you've gone to that janitor level, you've gone to the cleaner level, you had to wear all these different hats. What made you want to repeat this whole startup process again? So you've just done that, you've exited, you've done well with that, you're happy. Why are you back down in the trenches trying to work out the next one and wear all the different hats again?
I guess insanity. As much as I like to say it's a choice, I think it's just a wiring. Like I took 6 months off basically in the past, I guess, couple of months. And when traveling, started talking to people, advising, and I just couldn't help it. I was like, I need to get back into building. So, your previous question about, it's a hard journey. I think it is hard. It's not simple, but it's not impossible either. So I think it's just about your wiring. Like, this is where I get my most excitement, self-awareness, maybe going back to that point. I think this is where you get so much data points and feedbacks. You're questioning yourself so much. That hopefully results in you improving yourself and then your business and then the people around you. You're lifting basically the community up through those, constant feedback loops. So this is the only thing I know how to do.
Yeah, right. Interesting. And do you feel like you two are the same way in terms of your why this, you have to have that challenge and need again?
Yes, and we're insane as well.
I'll let that be that, didn't I?
Yeah, for sure. It
Yeah.
seems to be that way. I can't not do it. I see opportunities and you just want to solve them in a way. I think there's partly the empathy must be high, for all of us to go, I just want to help. How can I help? But our way of doing that in terms of whether it's our wiring or whatever's is to build a business around that so that it can help more people in a way.
Scale.
Yeah.
Scale.
Rather than just turn up and help one person at a time, we start to see the opportunity of how we can do that on a bigger basis.
I love that point. And it sort of touches on the point beforehand, which is that tech is the enabler of this in terms of scaling this solution or this help worldwide.
I was just going to say, like, building a company was never on my agenda. Like, I never woke up saying, hey, I want to create a company, I want to do. So my first stance at, doing something, I was just so frustrated by a problem that I literally started with that. And then I was like, well, how do you create a page where you can put a PDF on it so people can click on it? And it was like, oh, you need a website. And then to have a website, you need a hosting. Oh, what's a hosting? And then what's a domain name? And then how do you do X, Y? So it was kind of like following these like breadcrumbs basically to get to where you need to get. But the point was never to create a company. And I'm pretty sure, it wasn't the same for anyone here. It's solving a problem that you're so frustrated with. And it just happens that building a company to attract people is the only way, or it's the easiest way to get that done.
Yeah, and then I think that really ties back to the definition that innovation is a process that creates value, and you're just listing out those steps. Okay, I have to get this next step and this next step to get to that end value as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the word entrepreneurship is one that like makes me feel funny, like being an entrepreneur. I'm curious, like in the audience, who here wants to start a company? Like, is here because they're thinking about founding a company?
Show of hands.
Cool.
So maybe about 50%.
Like half. Yeah. Like, it's definitely not something that like so maybe in contrast to you guys, like I don't think I'm wired to necessarily only be a founder or start a company. I'm really motivated by solving problems that I care about. And there's so many ways to do that. Like, you can do it by founding a company, and sometimes no one else is solving the problem. So you kind of need to do it yourself. That's what you're explaining. But there's other ways to do it. You could do it in the public sector. You could do it within an organization that has existing resources. You could join someone else's company who's solving that problem. And I think that where I've seen entrepreneurs be successful is because they really started with a problem they want to solve. And we're not moving around.
Yeah.
And where I've seen them often not be successful is because they thought it was glamorous to be an entrepreneur. And they're like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and it's going to be great. And it's not great. It kind of sucks. You know, it's like it looks glamorous because maybe you can sit on a panel every now and then, but man, it's hard work. So you've really got to care about the problem that you're solving.
We try to solve that myth with the Startup Screw Ups panel beforehand. So hopefully that sort of set the reality for most of the students here. I think another question that a lot of the students will have here, and it's really rare to have so many, repeat founders, is the second time easier? And why? Why is it easier? Is it harder? Why? I'll start with Adam.
So there's definitely things you learn the first time that you can apply the second time that gives you some shortcuts. That's like for sure. It doesn't guarantee your success by any means. Something that I've found is that the second time comes with more expectations, expectations that you put on yourself. I'm like, well, I did it once before, so the second time must be an immediate success, right? And expectations from others, whether they be investors or friends or customers. So that's kind of something to watch out for, is not to worry too much about those expectations. And yeah, and not sort of, I guess, be complacent that just because you've done it before, it's gonna, everything is gonna work. But for sure, I've learned some things that have made it a little bit easier.
And then I wanted to follow up with you, particularly with this question was, is having that, maybe, and correct me if this is wrong, but I would assume that having the access to capital might be easier for you this round. Is that actually a problem in the long run for your company and for you, in terms of maybe you can be more relaxed in this area, or maybe you can hire more staff and not be as, what's the word? Prudent. What's the word? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Frugal, as you
frugal.
might would otherwise. Yeah.
I guess not for me, because we've been super capital efficient with
Okay.
Hatch. It's definitely made it easier to raise capital.
Okay.
So we didn't raise from any VCs. We raised from a host of private individuals, usually high net worth individuals that think a little more long term. VCs often have really specific portfolio objectives they're trying to achieve, and we just didn't want to be tied up in that. We wanted to run our own game. So that, doing the second time around allowed us to do that, which was a privilege. That's been really, really fortunate. But I have seen other second time founders raise a boatload of cash, and it's tripped them up because it can mask success. Like, it looks like you're doing well, but you're just actually spending a lot of money. And if you stop spending the money, your customers stop coming. So yeah, that is a trap people fall into.
Goodness, there's another question I want to ask there, but I think I have to go around. So Farid, you're right at the beginning stages now. Do you have any insight in terms of repeating? Is there any easier or harder in it, or do you think what are your thoughts?
I think, I guess the saying ignorance is bliss. I think second time around, it's kind of like you've run a marathon once and you still got to run it, right? The second time you can, I guess you get better at, I guess, managing your breath or, your energy, but you still have to run, right? So I think that part doesn't really change, but the parts where, again, you're so frustrated by a problem that just occupies your mind. Like, there's nothing else that you really think about when you're kind of doing it again and again. So I'd say it's kind of in the middle. It's still hard. You still have to put in the effort, but it's at the same time, you've learned so much, right? Like, you've fallen down so many times. So you can cut some corners, but you still have to do the same things, from talking to customers, getting feedbacks. Like, those things don't really change. Maybe how fast you get there could change. And I'm pretty sure there's like statistics around, repeat founders in terms of success by certain, metrics. The stat is actually higher because you've learned so much, obviously.
But you feel like you need that fundamental obsession still that needs to be there.
Yeah, because going back to Adam's point, like, it's so hard that you won't last. You're going to get rejected by customers. You're going to get rejected by investors. But whatever, like, there's so much friction for this not to happen. That's why no one else has done this before you. So you can call it the momentum, the friction, whatever it may be. There's so much pushback for this not to happen, that you got to basically push through all of that. And I think that's where you need a lot of resilience, grit, and obsession and maybe a bit of insanity.
What I love about all three of you speakers in particular is you all have a really strong link to social impact, and that really shows through all your work and also through the startups that you have. I'll start with Adam. Adam, this is quite funny. It links to the question I asked before. So this is a question I asked you 3 years ago now, with the first Sydney Innovation Festival back in 2019. I used to run a class called Finding Meaning Without Religion. What does having a sense of purpose have to do with innovation? And then what I wanted to ask as well to follow up is, do you think young people find their sense of purpose? Has that changed in the last 3 years? And is that sort of linked to Hatch as well?
Yeah. Yeah, so I used to teach this class how to find meaning without religion at a place called the School of Life, showing my philosophy roots here. The School of Life is a program that was set up by Alain de Botton, who's a contemporary living day philosopher. His wife actually runs the program, but really amazing. They've actually shut down in Australia due to COVID, which is so sad. So hopefully they set back up again soon. And I think the pursuit of meaning and the pursuit of purpose is inextricably linked with startups and starting a company. Because both of them are just around giving a shit about a problem and wanting to do something about it. The pursuit of meaning is really about how do we see ourselves? Like, who are we? What do we care about? What are our values? And how do we fit in the world? Like, where's the place for us? Where do we belong? And what are the sort of symbols of belonging? And people find meaning in all sorts of ways. That class was about secular paths to meaning, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with religious paths to meaning. So, some of those symbols can be a place like a church or a synagogue or a ritual, like, I don't know, like a baptism. And, I guess startups are kind of around the same thing. Who am I? What do I care about? What are my values? What do I see in the world? And where do I want to fit? And like, what impact do I want to have? So I think there is like a large overlap there. That's my like abstract thinking hat on. To the second part of your question, how do young people and students in particular like engage in the pursuit of meaning in their career? I think it has changed, but I think the behaviors changed rather than the intent. And the intent has been there for about 2 decades now, where when people look at their career at the start of it, instead of saying, I just want to make money and make my parents proud, they're starting to say, I want to do something that I give a shit about and want to make an impact. And that desire has been growing as we've shifted from the industrial age into the information age. The industrial age of work was all about like learn a bag of skills when you're young and do them for 40 years. The information age of work is much more complex. There's a web of stuff you can do and you can move around between it as you like. So basically means that now we can pursue like a sense of purpose through our work, and people have wanted to for a while. COVID made a huge change in the behavior. COVID basically shook everyone up and said, hey, the status quo doesn't have to be there. We can be more demanding around like what companies give us, that they're aligned to our values, that they think about work-life balance, that they think about flexibility, that they pay attention to what the next generation wants, that they think about sustainability and their impact on the environment. And these issues have gone from a little bit under the surface, bubbling up every now and then, to like full blown on top of the surface. Everybody needs to pay attention to it.
Yeah, interesting. And that's exactly why I wanted to ask you that question for the last 3 years, because it's directly linked to Hatch.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the link to Hatch is that we try and facilitate it. We're almost like putting fuel on the fire. Like we're saying, hey, like if you want to find work that is meaningful for you, here's the place. Because we allow you to express your values and your interests and discover companies and opportunities that meet with it.
Jessica, I've got a bit of a personal one for you. I've seen your promotion of your father's amazing work on LinkedIn. What I wanted to ask you firstly was if you could share a little bit to the audience about what he does. I'll just open it to you first and I'll follow up with another question after.
Sure. So yes, in 10 days' time, actually, I am putting on an abstract art exhibition for my father's art. So about in 2019, he got a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer and had already been living with Parkinson's at that time for 20 years. And he was given only 3 to 12 months to live. And he'd started painting before, but then it just exploded and it was taking over the space. He was offered a new sort of treatment for the cancer, which was immunotherapy, which he said yes to. And whilst that was going on, the paintings just kept filling up the house. And he started talking about wanting to see his art on the walls. And he said, when I have an exhibition, it's going to be great. All these people will see it. And I could tell that he wasn't going to be able to do that himself in where he was. So I made a decision 2 years ago to say, well, I'll make it happen for you. And COVID obviously happened and we had to do it by distance because he was in Orange. But effectively, yes, on the 30th of October, on the Harbourside room of the Museum of Contemporary Art, my father will have his debut exhibition called My Kids Could Do That.
Fantastic. The reason why I wanted to ask that question is, number one, it's a fantastic story, but also to ask how important is your family network to your startup? So for instance, do you try to keep your work and family completely separate, or they integrated? I think that's a really interesting concept for a lot of the students here.
I mean, no, it's not separate. It's all, for me, nothing in my life is separate. It is all connected. It is all me in my different aspects. And my children help pack boxes at the same time as my father was an entrepreneur as well. I helped him. He created a newsletter at the time. He was a creative director at Ogilvy and Mather, and then left that to open up his own agency himself. He had a newsletter at the time that was physical, put it in the post, send it to people. And we had to all help with putting the labels on. And if we didn't put them exactly straight, they were thrown out and you had to do it again. So that has always been a part of my life, that work and family and ideas and creativity has all weaved together.
And you think that's an important thing that students to take if they have their own startup, including and incorporating all this together in terms of the family?
In terms of, I'm not going to give advice, you're going to make your own decisions on those types of things. You can't not, because it's all of you and it requires all of you at the beginning in a way. Yes. Yeah, you want to have some boundaries in terms of health at the same time. That's been a big lesson for me the second time around. My health is very important to me, especially for having a father who's gone through what he's gone through. You then make some different decisions along the way. And so making sure that there is meditation and ocean swims and things like that at the same time as working hard on my things. The second time around has been a learning for sure.
It's a lovely story. I'm so glad I was able to share it. Doing my research, I thought that's got to be in there. I've got Farid last, who is a personal question. Farid, you're the scariest person I could have on this panel. It's because, number one, you know so much about me, but you also changed my perspective on something so quickly, and you recently have as well. Something I wanted to ask you was, you've been in a leadership position as a founder. You've had employees underneath you spanning across America to Australia. What do you think are the most important traits in a leader? We've probably already touched on this already.
Firstly, thank you. I did not think of myself as scary by any means. Couple of therapy sessions to work through that.
The insanity, yeah.
I'm going to go back to, again, actually maybe, so empathy again, first one. And I think second one's probably self-awareness.
Okay. So you've got those two traits there. What I wanted to know was, how are you sort of integrating these into your own leadership style? And what do you think the challenges were for you and your style?
So maybe a correction. I wouldn't say I've got them.
Okay.
I think I'm working on them. I've kind of, maybe I'm actually right at the beginning. I've realized how important they are. I wouldn't say I've integrated them fully, but I kind of appreciate that they need to exist.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, because if you can do that, then you kind of respect people who already have it. You show them value. That's how you basically can attract people to join your journey. And I've just forgotten your question. What was your?
That was it. Exactly. How do you integrate those, and what are the challenges that you have?
Yeah. So I guess first step is just realizing it. I guess, putting that into practice. For example, if you don't come from a tech background, it's very easy to be ignorant towards people who are coming from a tech background, or vice versa. If you're coming from a tech background and seeing someone who's only, business minded, I think it's very easy to misjudge or misinterpret their value or contribution. So I think the first step is always to have that empathy, realize that there is a value, there is a space for everyone on that journey. And then once you have that, I think that just gives you energy to, build into your daily habits, daily routines, and integrate it.
That's great. That's coming up in these questions. What I want to do is I want to hand to the audience for your questions. So if you have some questions, get them in your minds. But I'm going to finish off with a quick rapid fire round, okay? So if you could please answer very fast. I'm going to ask everyone, but I'm going to ask firstly Farid, then Adam, then Jessica. What are the best books for the audience to read, given that they are here today?
Oh, I've got ADD. I don't read books. So.
Okay, Adam, your turn.
Just read fiction.
Read fiction.
Expand your imagination.
And Jessica?
My suggestion would be, it's a brilliant book called The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur by Pauline Ewan.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, next quick question. Roughly how many times do you think, just give me a quick number, were your startup ideas rejected? You're first.
How many times?
Yeah.
More than I can remember.
What do you remember?
Like
Adam?
probably 200 for the Iconic, like mostly from fashion brands at the time. And I don't know, maybe 100 Hatch, mostly investors.
Okay, and Jessica?
So I wouldn't say the ideas were rejected, but in terms of other people saying, oh, I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, probably in the hundreds.
Yeah, right. Gotcha. Okay, thumbs out like this. Basically, we're going to go a thumb up or thumb down. The first question is just going to ask, is a strict routine important to success?
Strict routine.
Strict routine. Ooh, undecided there, undecided. Okay, and then I want to ask everyone again, what is the most important aspect of your routine for it?
As in what goes into my routine?
What's the most important thing? Yeah. You should be on that side. This is rapid fire. So it needs time to think.
You've got two philosophers there pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. They're like,
I'm a perfectionist. I'm gonna, I guess, my mornings, I'd say, I think I've had to learn how to manage my energy more than my time. And I think the start of the day is very important to how you start with that. So, getting as much sun as you can in the first 30 minutes that you wake up, drinking water, basic stuff, but things that seemingly make a difference.
Blocking time in the week for yourself before you put in anything related to work. And if you don't do that, you'll burn out in a jiffy.
It's an energy management and a self one as well, 100%.
That's so funny that
Yeah.
we'll have very similar answers. That's great. Okay, what's the worst aspect of your current routine?
Not being able to switch off.
Interesting. Adam?
Time zones, like early mornings, late nights, dealing with other time zones. I need my sleep.
I wouldn't say I have a worst part.
Oh.
I know. There's challenges, of course, and there's times when it's a little bit later than others, but I wouldn't go any of it is worst.
I think that's very interesting that all the answers there were energy management to do with routine. That's really interesting. Okay, we've got one final question. Adam, this one is for you. And then with the theme of the panel, it's a repeat question. What is the best current discount code for the Iconic? Don't think about it. Just answer as fast as you can.
I love Sydney University 2022. No,
That
actually,
better be up there.
there's always good discounts for students. So you'll always get it. You always pick up a bargain.
Yeah, go on the student discount. Fantastic. That's great. Now, I hope that you guys had some time to think about your questions. Whenever you're ready, just put your hand up and Laura will give you the mic. Starting at the front here, that's great. And please introduce yourself too. We'd love to know your name.
Hello. Hi, I'm Leo. I just had a question just to dig in a bit more about, I guess, your mental models for how you approach the problems for your first startups and then your second. Like, how did that differ? What were the questions you sort of asked yourself, especially for the second one? And how did you actually change the way you thought about those problems?
So the mentality between the first and second startup. Does anyone want to take this one?
I'll just jump onto the term mental model. I just think we met at a dinner recently. Is that right? Have we met?
Maybe. I'm a founder. I founded Bright Robotics.
Yeah, you're very familiar.
Yeah, okay.
But I definitely coming out of the Iconic into Hatch. I took a lot of frameworks and mental models that were developed in the Iconic into Hatch. So, two quick examples. One is one-way doors versus two-way doors. So when you make a decision, if it's a one-way door, it's very hard to reverse. Do a lot of analysis, make sure it's right. If it's a decision that's easy to reverse, like a Facebook marketing campaign, don't do analysis, just put it out there, see if it works, go for it. If it doesn't work, change it. It'd be one framework that I've used coming out of the Iconic. Another one would be where to start marketing. So we inverse the marketing funnel. So basically say, if you're trying to reach a new audience, start at the very bottom of the funnel. They're the people with the highest intent and work up. So highest intent might be search marketing, and then you might do social marketing, and then you end up with influencers and editorial at the top. So they're two frameworks I brought into Hatch. What I've found personally, this is my own experience, is I paid too much attention to frameworks. And I was like, oh, well, I learned all these things at the Iconic, they must be true, so I'll apply them textbook at Hatch. And each business is totally different. And there's this old saying that every model is useful, but none are correct. And I probably would have paid, well, I do now pay more attention to that saying and use them for inspiration, but I don't hold them so tightly.
I'll add one thing quickly. I think the first-time founders always obsessed with product. Second time, it goes to distribution, because you realize it doesn't really matter how good your product is if you can't get into people's hands. So With that in mind, I think, again, you remove your obsession with your product, how much you love the tech, how beautiful the UI is, and it goes more towards the experience that you're trying to create, and then working backwards. And that happens to be this UI, this product spec, this kind of experience.
Perfect. If you have another question, please put your hand up and Laura will come round.
Can I just jump on that one too?
Oh, yeah, sure.
When I
please.
heard you say mental models, I thought for me, that's more what am I telling myself along the way and along the journey, which is a really important part, because you're the one who has to have the passion and keep it going, and then keep it together for everybody else around you at the same time when you're getting all of the rejections and things like that. So something that I've taken the second time around is that confidence of what I've been able to do before. So I often ask myself, what does my life already demonstrate? That I can work things out. I can work these things out. So it's those sort of mental models that comes to mind for me that mean it's a little bit easier this time around.
Perfect. What you've just been handed out here is a feedback form. If you do the feedback, by the way, you'll be able to tell your panel what you thought, but also there are instant prizes to win. So there are $50 office work vouchers, a refilled water bottle, and also some Incubate socks. So just be filling that out in the background because we don't have too much time. Is there another question from the audience? Yeah, thanks, Ash. At the front here.
How did you know it was okay to leave your first one before you started your next one?
Did anyone leave their first one before starting the next one? I think it was.
Yeah, I did. So for me personally, I got pregnant and I wanted to be a mum. That was the decision. So I sold and I spent 6 years being a mum.
I did both at the same time. So I was developing Hatch while running the Iconic for maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, which was like a really bad idea. I was like, oh, Elon Musk can do it. You should never start an idea with Elon Musk can do it. So I actually wish I'd had a clean break, take some time out, travel for 6 months, have like some more freshness coming into it. And if I were to go to a third one, then that's how I'd do it.
For me, I think you just know when you feel like there's something else that you truly care about. So going back to that perseverance, if your heart isn't in it 100%, it's just not going to work. So long term, you know that it's kind of like bound to, kind of get energy out of you. So I think when you feel that energy, when you feel that there is something else that you're passionate about and you want to devote your life, it's a long journey, 10, 15 years. It's a big commitment. So you don't want to really give up on that opportunity. But at the same time, you've got to be very careful in terms of not being just opportunistic, chasing the shiny object. But yeah, for me, it sounds very simple, but you just feel,
I think that's all the time we have today, because what I want to happen is for everyone to be able to come up and ask the speakers questions face to face. I think that's a much better interaction than going, hey, this is my question. But I want to say a massive, massive thank you to our speakers. Can everyone give a massive round of applause, please? Thank you very much, Dr. Farid Mirmohensi, Adam Jacobs, and Jessica Kiely. They'll stick around for hopefully about 5 minutes so you can ask your questions face to face. Otherwise, we're all going to move into room 277, where we're going to have Susme pitches, YEC pitches, and finally, we'll announce these instant win prizes. Thank you very much.